Welcome to Vision Pros, the show all about spatial computing, visionOS, and getting work done on the Apple Vision Pro. I'm Tim Chen, host of the show.
Juno, the name, I have like a document that's just like random app names I think would be cooler. Maybe it was like random icon names for Apollo icons. And I think I had Juno in there just because like I like the sound of it. It has kind of like, I think it's a Roman god or something. So it kind of had like kind of the Apollo ethos with it a little bit too. And it was kind of short and punchy. And I don't know, it's just one of those things that you hear the name and you're like, yeah, I kind of dig that.
Welcome back to another episode of Vision Pros. We're joined by Christian Selig, the developer of Juno, the awesome YouTube app for visionOS. Christian lives up in Canada and did a road trip down to my Apple store in New Hampshire for his pickup of Apple Vision Pro, and we were amongst the first in New Hampshire to do the demo and purchase our headsets. In this episode, we discuss our first month using the Apple Vision Pro and dive deep into Juno. You can support this podcast over at visionpros.fm/Patreon. And by subscribing to either the Patreon or in Apple Podcasts, you'll get early access to both iPad Pros and Vision Pros. My thanks to everyone that supports the show. With that, here's my discussion with Christian. Enjoy. Welcome to the podcast, Christian.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited for this chat. You're one of the first apps I bought for visionOS that morning of release.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I kind of hand-delivered it to you at the store. I think,
right, yeah. So for those that know you, you're Christian Selig of Apollo fame and Juno on visionOS.
Exactly, yeah.
And can you share a bit on your background for those that don't know?
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of a boring traditional background insofar as kind of just always been into computers, and in high school was kind of wondering where to go with that, and ended up doing like the comp sci degree route. And after that, like throughout all of that, like I was really interested in iOS apps and just the whole concept of them. And it was so cool. I always thought like back then it was when the whole like there's an app for that commercials were really big. So I loved the idea of like, oh, I can just build this app, submit it like you would like a YouTube video, and then potentially like somebody could download it. And that was such a cool, like up until then, like software to me was like something you'd get at like the Apple store or something in a box. Like it was very hard to distribute. So kind of the democratization of it almost through the App Store felt really cool. So I was like, okay, I want to do something with apps. And I ended up for my last year of university, I got an internship at Apple, and that kind of like really set things in motion for me. And after that, I started building Apollo and worked on that for almost a decade. And then that kind of had a cataclysmic ending. And then after that, I've mostly been working on, like, I have another side app called Pixel Pals. It's kind of like a virtual pets app that I've been working on too. And then took a little break from that to build this Juno for YouTube app for visionOS, since YouTube was kind of like, no, we're not really interested in doing a YouTube app, at least from the get-go. So I was like, okay, I want a YouTube app, so I'll build it myself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of great content on YouTube, as you
know. Yeah, exactly. It's I watched so much YouTube, and it was kind of like when the Vision Pro was coming out, it was kind of one of those things that like YouTube had an app for the Quest. So it was kind of just in my head, like an assumption, like, oh, there'll be a YouTube app day one for the Vision Pro. And when I heard there wasn't, it was kind of like, damn, like that was something I was really looking forward to. Like that's unfortunate, but I also had all this code in Apollo for handling YouTube video embeds on like Reddit and everything. So I had a decent experience with kind of like the YouTube embed stuff. So it's like I could whip up an app that would be at least a hell of a lot better than Safari would be. And yeah, it ended up being like a really fun project.
So how excited were you for Apple Vision Pro, visionOS on keynote day? Did you have experience with other headsets? Like, was this, or did it take a bit of hearing more about it to do?
I'm I guess like an Apple fanboy at heart, insofar as like I was really excited just because like I find Apple products are normally pretty fun to develop for, and this was such a fundamentally different device to build for. And just like the prospect of something so new and novel building for was like really fun. Like it could have been like the Apple Rubik's Cube, and if it had apps, like I think like that would be a fun thing probably to build for, just because it's weird kind of. It's not what you're used to. So I was really excited like from the get-go, just in the aspect of the novelty of it. And yeah, so I was kind of hooked from day one, but I didn't have any experience with any headsets after that. Like I did get a Quest not too long after, just to kind of like get my feet wet. So I have a little bit of experience now between that and the Vision Pro. But yeah, I don't think I was like a skeptic or anything from the get-go. I was kind of like, this looks interesting. Kind of excited to see what it's like when I get it.
And getting it, you're up in Canada, so New Hampshire, where I'm at, so is your natural spot across the border. And no sales tax down here.
Well, no, it was kind of like doing the calculus. I was like, okay, so I can't get it in Canada. The closest like state to me in Nova Scotia would be Maine.
Yeah.
And then funnily enough, like you need an Apple store. You can't just go into Maine and say, I want bring me a Vision Pro. So I was like, okay, where's the nearest Apple store to the border? And it was like all the way, I think in Portland.
Is it Portland? Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like basically all the way at the bottom of Maine. So I had, and I'm entering through the top of Maine. So I had to like, I'm like, okay, I'm driving all the way to the bottom of Maine. And then I'm like, at that point, you're like, I don't know, like an hour from New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And I was like, I might as well drive like another hour or two to save like hundreds of dollars in sales tax. So I just went to New Hampshire, and it ended up being like a really fun trip. Like it's so beautiful driving through like those areas, like New England in the winter with all the snow and everything. It was, I really enjoyed it.
Nice. Yeah. And did you escape import duties, or how's Canada handle when you come back into the country?
They're pretty good, honestly. We have a thing with computers where you don't pay import duties on computers like you would if you just bought like, I don't know, like alcohol or food or something and tried to bring it across the border. So computers are duty free. However, you still have to pay the sales tax for the province you're importing it into. So luckily I live in the province with the highest sales tax in the country. Yeah. So I think I had to pay like 15% sales tax on it when I crossed the border. But it's one of those things that it was like inconsequential, because if I, say I wait a year and it's available in Canada, like I'd still have to pay sales tax on it then anyway. So it's not really like any loss per se. But it was nice not getting double dipped.
And I'm curious, Canadian money, are Apple products cheaper to buy regardless of sales tax and stuff?
Our dollar is like all over the place. Like it's been pretty steadily worse than the US dollar for a little bit now, but like even like 10 years ago, it was like it exceeded the US dollar a little bit. So it's kind of all over the place and fluctuates a lot. And depending on what season you catch it in, you might get a good deal on an Apple product or a bad deal. So I think like if you were to convert like at its current rate, like the Vision Pro would be around like 5,000 Canadian dollars.
Okay.
So like a little bit more than the 3,500, but yeah, you might get lucky, and Apple might like say it might be 5,100 in an actual conversion, and Apple might just say like we'll make it an even 5,000, and then you might benefit a little bit. But yeah, it kind of depends on luck of the draw, I suppose.
Cool deal. Yeah. And yeah, this was one of the most tamest new platform launches I've ever been to. Like, there's like a couple people there, and you had the people without appointments and stuff. And I remember the iPad was just around the door lines and stuff. And
I haven't. Like the iPhone launches are really the only ones I've been to. And normally there's a little bit more fervor just because it's, I guess, a little more accessible. But it was still fun.
It was fun
far as that, like, the people there were very passionate about it. So it was
cool
fun
getting the first demos and them trying to figure out. It's like, I think you have to scan some QR code for these lenses because otherwise eye tracking just doesn't work.
Yeah, there's definitely some growing pains, but I think everyone was pretty chill. Yeah.
So, using the device in Canada, did you stock up on like iTunes gift cards, or how are you handling the different media?
Yeah. So before I left, I just went to like there was a Walmart in Portland or something, and I just bought some like US gift cards. And it was actually not as bad as I thought for like the process of using it out of the country. Like I thought you'd have to completely use a US Apple ID, but you like for your iCloud and everything too. But like what you can separate them, so you can have like your normal Canadian Apple ID and whatever signed in, but just for the US App Store, you can just sign into a US Apple ID. So you kind of have this. I still have all of my iMessages, photos, and whatnot syncing perfectly. It's just
like the media purchases are separate.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just like if I wanted to buy like Black Box again, when it comes to Canada, like I'd need to buy that again on my Canadian iTunes card. But like there's like I don't know, like it, unless you're buying like hundreds and hundreds of dollars of apps, like it's not that big a deal, I don't think. For me at least, like I think I got a $50 gift card, and I think I've spent most of that, but like outside of that, I'm pretty good.
Black Box is pretty wild.
That was definitely one of the like definite purchases for me. Like Ryan crushed it with that.
Yeah, my media account has been separated from my main Apple account forever because I grew up as a kid on Windows, and I had over my Gmail thing I used for iTunes. So once I got a Mac in college, I got my mobile me and Mac account.
Right.
So they've been separated because of that, and they've never had a way to merge them. So I've always had this Gmail account for all my media and apps, and then.
Oh, okay. So there's a use case outside of like the foreigner thing. Okay, that's good to know.
I don't think any new user would encounter this, but if you were like a user back in the days before you had a reason to have an Apple account.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely some historical baggage there.
Yes. So, we're about a month into visionOS. Has the novelty worn off? Like when you put it on, is it still exciting and
honestly, for me, totally. Like, just like how locked in everything is. Like, just the fact you place a window and then you walk away to grab your coffee and then you come back and it's just like dead stuck there. It blows my mind every time. Like the first time I saw it was like I was in the hotel room in New Hampshire, and I think I was like just laying on the bed watching YouTube videos, and I had the window position kind of like at the foot of the bed, like a big TV at the foot of the bed, and I went up and like grabbed something from my suitcase. And like I turned around to walk back to the bed, and it was just like there was this like razor thin flat screen, like 200-inch TV sitting in front of the bed, and I was just like, "Holy shit! Like this is something." And like I still like maybe not quite to like that like mind blowing extent, but like every time I see it, I'm like, "That's freaking cool." And it's still so fun. I find like just coding, like sitting at like any of the cool environments, it just coding for like a few hours is like a nice distraction from like the normal sitting at a desk for the day, because you can kind of just I can sit on my bed with my laptop on my lap and just code like I'm wherever the hell I want. And yeah, so like it's still very novel for me, but it's one of those things where I'm a developer, so like a lot of the use cases for me are like developer focused, like you would be, and so like I can't speak to how it would like if you were just a better adjusted non-developer person, and you were just using it for more traditional means. Like I don't know. I can't speak to if like it would be that mind blowing to me, because most of my uses surround development.
Right.
But it's very, very cool for that.
Yeah, the White Sands environment is a sleeper hit. It's kind of hidden amongst the coming soon environments, and it's super nice in the sunset. It's just like this is so nice.
I like the environments. Like I think in general are just one of the things that like people who maybe don't have the headset sleep on the most, because there's like I almost wish Apple would almost open like a third-party app store just for those. Like let some like people who are Blender professionals or whatever come in and like build these like 3D scenes of like I don't know, you're sitting inside a volcano or something, and it's like like that would be so cool. Because right now, like, there's a bunch of cool scenes, but like it doesn't take long before you're like, okay, I want some more. Like this is kind of cool.
Yeah, for sure. And that notion of you stand up and you can see the windows as these huge flat screen panels, like it does feel like that. It's like, oh my god, these like if a TV was like this would be just insane.
It's honestly like I have a pretty big TV, and I've always found it cool, but like now more than ever I'm like I need an even bigger TV. Like this is like I want something that's like absolutely like dwarfs the living room and just is like sucks me in.
I was watching Minority Report last night on Vision Pro, of course,
apt.
And what stood out to me is the transparent displays and how that laptop was just announced, and it looks exactly like Minority Report displays, like the transparency in the display.
Oh my god, yeah. Like I almost it's eerie. I like, and in a way I almost wish that like you could make the windows like more transparent, and if there's content on them, like one of the things, like when you're coding for a few hours, I'm like, and you've got this beautiful environment in front of you, and you've got like your Mac virtual display in front of you, like taking up all your vision. I'm like, it would be kind of cool to like put it at like 80% opacity and just kind of like let you see like the beautiful lake behind it or something. Because right now, like sometimes you kind of have to like dodge around and be like, oh shoot, like if I look around, it's beautiful. But
one thing I've noticed is if I'm watching a movie and I'm not in an environment, I'll have like a toaster oven poking through a screen with some opacity, and I wish there was some like more. I wish there was some more settings for like I'm watching a movie. Let me not have things.
Toaster ovens appear.
Yeah.
No, that's toaster oven mode. No, that's a good point. It's I feel like they're kind of like hopefully collecting feedback on those like little random edge cases, and bettering them, because yeah, there's definitely some oddities where like you'll move a little bit and something will appear and you're like, oh, I don't know about that.
One thing I noticed, so Connected, I think, was talking about the fact that the windows adjust based on your head tilt. So
right.
Yesterday I was playing around just moving windows as I was tilting my head, and it was just so much fun to just like see the windows move along your head tilts.
It's bizarre because like I found I could only get it to do it too above like a certain like pitch, I guess, for lack of a better term. Like if I'm just like looking straight at the horizon and I do it, it doesn't. But like if I look closer to the ceiling, then it'll suddenly like do it really well. But it's wacky. Like, and like stuff like that is why I almost wish there was like more fine grain controlled rather than just head movement, because for whatever reason
I could almost like move.
Exactly.
Have some kind
with your hands or something, because I really like pinning the Mac Virtual Display to like my laptop screen like a weirdo, like just like if it was a 21-inch laptop or something. And it's really tricky to do that necessarily, because like if you're even like slightly off kilter to your laptop, like you kind of have to like play shimmy with your laptop. So it's a little weird. But
I've seen some apps, I think they have to take over everything, but they can find my walls and like put a picture frame on the wall, and there's like a wall. But I think that only works if you take over and do the fully immersive thing.
It does. That's one of the things that like I get why that's that way, because like if you had two apps that did that, like how would they know about each other and they conflict? But like I wish there was a solution to in like visionOS 2.0 that made it like a little better, because it's unfortunate that like I find like some of the coolest experiences are in that like fully immersive mode, and it's such a trade-off with like, okay, this is dope, but like I have to kill everything else that's around me in order to see it. I want a
mode where it's aware of my walls and I can put windows on walls. Like,
or even like in Juno, I'm like working on like a mode that just uses like the head tracking anchor. It's pretty simple, where like it pins it to your head, so you can like if you're walking around like vacuuming, it'll stick with you.
To, like pinch and walk around.
Exactly, one hand on the vacuum, one hand on the window. And it's really handy, but just like I just wish, like since it's doing head tracking, it needs to be a fully immersive mode. So it's like, oh, if you had, I don't know, like Safari app with a recipe or like Crouton or something, it just destroys all of those. Or it doesn't destroy them, but it hides them at least. And it's kind of like it in my, like as a programmer I get it, but as a user I'm like, why does pinning a window to my head necessitate everything else going away? Like it's a little like other platform, and again it probably speaks more to the infancy of the platform than anything, but like I think on like the Quest you can just like literally pin a window, and it just stays there, and it's kind of like regardless of everything else going around. So it's hopefully 2.0.
And like there's this lava lamp battery app which is really brilliant, has the time and
I saw that.
It's great, but you have to be very meticulous about like placing it on a table, versus if it was aware of your geometry with that I know visionOS is, and just like place it on a table. That'd be so nice if you could have these, situations where you could do that stuff,
Yeah, where it's not all or nothing, because like, and it was a similar thing with Pixel Pals, where I was like, it would be so cool. Like I had a little demo of like a little like raccoon running around in your apartment, and I still want to like finish it up, but like it would be like definitely a little better if like you could have that raccoon running around while like you were watching a YouTube video or something. Like right now it's like you can either watch the raccoon run around or do another thing, but not both. And it's not like the end of the world, but it definitely does dampen it a little bit. So it might also be like, it wouldn't surprise me if it was like a hardware thing where like if you have 17 apps running concurrently doing hand tracking, like the thing like you just hear the fans like go crazy. And
I can imagine Pixel Pals, it's aware if you put your hand like open and Pixel Pal just jumps on your
exactly
hand, and you could like feed it with the other hand kind of thing.
That's what I was thinking, like all these like cool things you could do with that, but it's tricky. Like I was thinking like, oh, it'd be cool to pet them, but like what happens like when you like phase your hand through them, like that would be such like a weird experience where you're petting them and you trip and you're suddenly like your hands through it, and it's like there's no like you can't really have that tactile feedback like you can with obviously like a traditional animal.
But it would be fun with Pixel Pals to just have them set loose in your house and just see them wandering around. But like every app I think has a little X and bar by it. Like how would that even
well, like for Pixel Pals I was thinking like it would be the fully immersive mode, so it would do the same thing as like the picture frames on the wall. Like it would detect the planes on the floor, and it would just like plonk the raccoon on the floor, and it would walk along like the 3D planes that the LiDAR sensor or whatever detects. But otherwise you'd basically be stuck with having like a floating raccoon volumetric window or whatever,
Right.
which would be cool.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think as cool, maybe.
Yeah. So outside of coding and entertainment, are you finding other uses for Vision Pro?
Honestly, like, not so far, but it's not out of a lack of like, it's not that I don't think they exist. It's that like I've been so enamored with developing for this thing that I've almost like spent most of my time just doing that. Like it's, yeah, I don't know. It's like you go to the grocery store and it's like, have you had anything other than the bread? And you're like, man, I'm just getting through the bread section. Like it's,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's other stuff, but like the bread's so good. And it's, yeah, so it's tricky. Like I'm sure there's some other amazing stuff. Like I want to try some of more of the games. Like I still haven't finished Black Box. But like, yeah, it's whenever I put it on, like I just want to keep building like stuff into Juno for it. And that kind of like consumes me so far. So like I still want to sit down and even just watch like a 3D movie or something, like because I still haven't managed to do that. But yeah, it seems like a pretty killer device, even if you sit down and do non-developer things with it, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I figured out sideloading on this headset.
Oh, really?
And that's been wild to install apps that some developers maybe don't want me to install. And it's amazing. Some apps, just the eye tracking is such a natural translation because trackpad support was so perfectly implemented in the iPad app that it feels like magic. And then some apps that are enabled in the App Store, like Discord's one I can think of that's just like a mess to use without a trackpad because
it doesn't have any like hover states.
Right, exactly. So
yeah, I thought that was interesting. That did you notice? Like for the App Store demo, I found I think it was like the Yumly app that they demoed. It didn't have any of that, and I was like, what a weird app to demo, and that it like isn't even like a fully implemented iPad app, and that like you'd be looking around basically like for the people who haven't done it, and it just would not react to your eyesight whatsoever because it had none of the hover states.
Right.
So they'd be like, look at this tab and select it. And I'd be looking and I'd be like, okay, but it's not giving me any indication that I'm like, but you'd click and it would work. It was so bizarre that I was like, okay. Because I left that thinking that's what iPad apps are on visionOS when I didn't realize that. Like I downloaded Ivory and it works like a charm.
Yeah.
Because they did the due diligence to make it a really good iPad app.
Right.
So it's, I think they should be demoing like Ivory or something in the App Store.
Yeah,
at the Apple Store.
Yeah, it is kind of wild. Like when iPad came out, I think every iPhone app just instantly was there. Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
I don't out of iPhone apps.
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't even know if you can because I feel like Instagram and all of their like grumpiness around building an iPad app, like they probably would just yank the iPhone app period. But I don't think there's a. Yeah, I don't know. Like maybe there is because I swear like WhatsApp didn't have even the option to run on an iPad for a while.
Right.
I remember hearing so maybe there is a way.
Yeah, maybe if you need phone technologies or a phone number, it'll have some way of
blocking it. Yeah, because but I definitely remember it being much less like Apple was much less flexible for lack of a better term, I guess. Like now it's very much like you want to opt out. Which I almost wish they wouldn't do, but like I guess I get legally and responsibly why they don't. Yeah. But
I wish they just said everything was on there. But I don't know. As a developer, would that irk you off? Even I don't know. It seems like all the apps that have trackpad support. Like I wish if an app had like the APIs that were in there for trackpad support, and it was clear to Apple like this would work well. Just let it run. Like
yeah. Well, it's like and in a way they're already being pretty generous in that it's opt out. So like as a developer, they're already like, we're going to let your app run on the Vision Pro. Just let us know if you don't want to. So like if you don't do anything as a developer, you'll still be like people will be able to download it. You as a developer actually have to go in and say no.
Yeah, it's funny.
Do not approve.
Abandonware apps from Sony, like PlayStation Communities and all the apps you don't want from PlayStation,
they
are
didn't bother?
Enabled. But it's
funny.
The apps that you do on like PS Remote Play and the PlayStation app. Those.
Yeah. Somebody probably forgot the password to that App Store Connect user
exactly.
a few years ago. Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah, and like editorial, this long abandoned great app runs on Vision Pro.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's a little well, and it's funny. Like I think I didn't even bother turning it off for Apollo because I was like, it's you can just run like the thank you goodbye screen or something. Right. Like why not?
Yeah. Are you totally done with like Reddit as far as like you as a user interacting with that?
Mostly, I think I just got so burnt out from it that like it just I don't find myself like, I can't tell if it's burnout or just like I find the content less potent than I used to. Like it's so hard. Like nostalgia is like a hell of a drug, and it's like I remember, I so fervently remember like I don't know, like 2015, like going on Reddit and it just like having all the top news stories for the day, like AMAs with like the biggest celebrities, and it's like you go on there now and it just doesn't feel like it has that same like punch, I guess, for lack of a better term. And it's not even like it's since Apollo's gone. Like I feel like it's been kind of going down that route like for the last few years. And it's so I don't visit it a ton, I guess, for that and like just like the burnout. I do visit like my local city subreddit just because I find that like super handy just for finding out like local news and stuff. And like I'll occasionally like end up on there from like a search result for like a niche keyboard community or something. But yeah, I don't find myself like typing in reddit.com or something, like typically just to like browse organically.
So I'm curious about any like Easter eggs you found in the operating system so far. The one thing I discovered, which I was very happy to discover, is if you click on the apps icon in the far left, it'll bring you from like the last apps page to the very first apps page, which is cool.
Oh, that's cool. So it's like instead of swiping, you can click almost.
Yeah, because there's no keyboard shortcut. Like on iPad, you can hit Command H twice, and it'll like go from the last to the first, I think.
Oh, really?
I'm pretty sure that works. But yeah, that was the only way I could find to like.
Have you tried like Command Shift H
on visionOS?
Yeah, with the keyboard.
Because there's no like overlay system like on iPad. You can hold Command to see everything that there is.
Because there's one where it's like, yeah, I can't remember. Like I know there's like a discrepancy on the iPad versus the like simulator where the keyboard shortcut to go home on the simulator is slightly different than the keyboard shortcut to go home on the iPad. And I think it's like whatever the other one is. Yeah. I swear that worked on visionOS, but I might be completely losing my mind. But I totally agree that it's like I wish there was a gesture to open that app switcher, or even just have like a not even like a multitasking menu, because like that's the UI, but just like a way to quickly bounce between apps. Right. Because I'll find sometimes I'm like, oh, I want to just quickly open Ivory or something, or just even a dock, and like going and being like, all right, okay, open the app, go to the compatible apps, open that. Like it feels very like iPhone OS 2.0 where it was like the app opening thing wasn't very streamlined. But yeah, Easter eggs. The only one, like, I wish I could remember who said it on Twitter, but I found it was pretty cool. Like you can like quadruple tap the home button and it'll go into like the recalibrating your eyes.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And that one was kind of cool because I think I switched to like a different brand of contacts and it was like the eye tracking was a little wonky. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, like you can just go through settings, so it's not even like it's that big of a time save. I did it all at once, but I was like, it's kind of cool that they built in like a shortcut just to quickly jump to that. And you just do the like select the dots mini game again, and it blows you back out, and now you've got a new set of eyes. And then now my eyes tracking works really well again, so that was pretty cool. But outside of that, I don't know if I've really picked up on any Easter eggs. It would be cool if like in the environments there was little like. I don't know, like a little animal scurried across map like or something once in a while. Like... Yeah, exactly. that would be great.
Yeah, there should be like a settings option and like for environments to enable like I don't know,
jump scares
like that.
Yeah. Just have a clown run at you after like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing.
Wow, that'd be great.
Joshua Tree at night, and just you look behind a tree, and there's something like looking around the tree at you. And
yeah. Like, jeez. Oh man, I was saying the other day that there should be environments for movies, and that would be so cool if you could buy like a movie, and like that movie would have an environment, and
that would be so cool
with that horror movies.
Yeah, because they used to do that with like the DVD extras. How they'd have like you put the DVD and you go to extras, and there'd be all these like cool, almost like bonus content or like even games sometimes that you'd play that they'd include just for fun. And like that would totally be
watching Alien from like the kitchen table, the ship or something.
And there's like acid drips around you and stuff like that. That would be so cool. It's one of those things where hopefully with like more adoption, like I like to think there's more people watching DVDs than there are with people with Vision Pros right now. So like maybe as it reaches like critical mass, there'll be more incentive for the studios to kind of do some cool stuff like that.
Yeah. Comfort wise, how are you finding it? Are you using the dual straps?
That's a great question. I find for me, I've got to the point now where I solely use the solo the pretty
solo
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, just with the one attachment in the back. And I found like if I kind of like slide it up my head a little bit, it's pretty comfortable. And it's one of those things where like I objectively find the dual loop one much more comfortable.
Yeah.
Even if I like, no matter how I shift it. But it's just, it looks so lame compared to the, the marketing of the other one.
Gets stuck in the Velcro.
It does not do it for me. And like, I feel like such an idiot, but I'd rather it look cool and have a little bit more discomfort than wear that other one. And I'm kind of just waiting for someone on Etsy to have like a crocheted, like a clip-on thing that you can put across the top of it.
Yeah.
Because like I saw people do the like they get two of them and then they rig it up that way, and it's like
it looks ridiculous.
That kind of that circles back to looking silly to me. So it's kind of like if it was just something subtle that just gave you a little bit of like head support, I think that would be pretty cool. But yeah, for me it's just I go and I find it kind of nice too that I've got the dual loop one is sized to my girlfriend's head, so whenever I'm like like check out this thing I built, like I can just like swap out the strap and like throw it on her head and it's perfect.
So you have a different size one. I'm medium for both.
Funnily enough, like it seems to like work pretty well, just like my sizes, but just taking the dual loop one and just like tightening it more because that one has a lot more adjustability.
More, right, yes.
But like the light seal and everything are the same, and it's just the dual loop thing that came in the box.
Does your light seal fit her pretty well?
Yeah, surprisingly, like it's as far as I can tell.
What number did you end up getting?
I ended up with the 23W. Okay, I think.
Yeah.
So it's funnily enough, and I think I scanned her, and she had a 33W, and I don't know if it. Like in my head, I was like 33 is bigger. So,
but
her head is much smaller.
Knowledge, it adjusts more on the cheek end of things.
Okay.
I did the swap thing, so I started with the 25W. Now I'm at a 13W.
It goes that low?
Yeah. I told it that my forehead was like pinching a bit, and then it's like, do you want to try a 13W? It's like, sure. It is radically closer to my face at a 13W.
Oh, interesting.
I think it's more comfortable, but I better feel the view.
I remember looking on like Twitter and Mastodon and seeing what kind of like the low end people got automatically from the app, and like 21 I swear was like this. So I wonder if that's like a special App Store edition or Apple Store like resize like option, because that's wild. Yeah, I didn't know about that. That's nice.
So I sent back my 25W and keeping the 13W. It's much closer to my face, which I like. At first, it was like I was getting warnings about the screens being too close. Like I was just putting it on too tight, I think, or something. But
okay, yeah. There's probably some adjustability there.
Yeah. But yeah. I kind of switch between the bands still. Like some days, like I want to be a solo guy.
It's not that hard to switch. Like to their credit, like the mechanism's pretty darn easy. I just find like you do with the old USB-A plugs, like I can never get the dual loop one in the right orientation the first time.
Absolutely, that one's the harder one, I think.
I'm like I'm trying to plug it in, and I'm like
it's upside down.
They're like perpendicular to the slots, and I'm like, it must be broken. And then I'm like,
I'm so curious about if there will be third-party bands made like there are cases.
Yeah, because it took people all of like 5 minutes to build like 3D printable like clips that like actually like very satisfyingly like snap into the metal parts. So like I can't imagine it'd be very hard for someone to build like a fully third-party version or even like I think it'd be killer for Etsy to just have people like crocheting or knitting like these like bespoke cute little straps that would just snap in.
I like the fabric approach from Apple for being able to lay down and use it like in a chair with my head against the back of a chair, because like on PSVR 2 you can't really lay down against something because it's a hard plasticky thing around your back of your head. But there's times where that might be nice when I'm just sitting upright and want more space.
Right.
Yeah.
It's tricky balance.
So third-party apps, what have been the favorite ones you've discovered so far?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say the main ones I've used so far, like funnily enough, the biggest one I use is Ivory, which isn't even like a visionOS specific app. It's like the compatibility mode. but they did a really good job with that. It lacks like the cool transparency of visionOS, but like it's still really well done, and I enjoy using that.
Do you turn it into dark mode in settings, or do you use in light mode?
You can do that?
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah, you can change.
Oh right, you would just like
different
manual
window
override.
things,
Oh no, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, no, that would be better. Yeah, I might do that now. But yeah, I've just been rocking the light mode. But
yeah, it kind
outside
of
of
sucks
that,
I hope visionOS 2 adds in visionOS settings and like iPad compatibility app system-wide settings where it does like dark mode and light mode.
yeah, it's kind of
toggles.
bizarre that
Yeah.
they defaulted to light mode. Like, I guess it's probably better contrast, maybe. But it's
Right.
yeah, like I definitely prefer dark mode. But yeah, outside of that, like it's mostly been a few of the games. Like I really like Black Box, obviously, and Devin Davies. Did you see like the Plate Smasher app he built?
Yeah.
Like that's one of those things that like I downloaded it and I was like expecting it to be like kind of fun, but it's such a simple concept that like I wasn't like expecting much, but I was
Yeah.
like, holy crap, like this is it's so satisfying. Just like throw them and see it like hit like random objects far in the distance and like perfectly like physics with it. And it was so funny because my girlfriend, like I'll show her the stuff I'm working on, but she hasn't been like that enamored by the device, but like she tried that out and was like, this is so cool. And just
You
so
should
it's like that was
totally
one of the
add,
sleeper hits.
like targets in
yeah,
your
yeah.
world or something. That's like,
Oh no, that would be cool because that's literally like immediately what I started doing was like, can I hit the chair across the room?
Yeah.
And so that's honestly been one of like my favorite apps. The other app that developer made, Crouton, is also really like a really good visionOS kind of like citizen.
yeah.
I'm trying to think. I'm almost drawing blanks. Yeah, you can tell how much I've done outside of developing. Is I haven't explored all too much.
Yeah, the
but
biggest
they're-
category I've noticed are there's like I have like probably 5 or 10 of these just like status apps with the time, battery, and
yeah, you're kind of dead to the
Weather.
world in that way.
yeah, weather's in there too for a lot of them.
Oh, weather would be a good one. Yeah. But yeah, that's a good point because like a lot of the like I find like how I'm sure it's strategic, but how removed you are from knowing the battery is such a weird experience to me because like when you're wearing it, you have to go into Control Center to see anything about it.
You lose track
and
of
then-
time as well.
and you lose track of time. But also like when you're not wearing the device, like I have no idea what the battery is. Like it's either
Yeah.
like solid and it's fine, or it's
Mhm.
orange and it's bad. Is kind of what I've gathered. But like I'd kind of like to know like, oh, it's at 60%. I should probably like charge that up.
Yeah, it'd be
but
nice
I
if
find,
like the iOS widgets app would include that.
Well, like I'd even love if they did like I don't know if you ever had one of the like the old I think it was like the first gen aluminum MacBook how it had the button on the side with
Yes.
like the
Mhm.
the battery LED.
Yeah.
Like I would love if it had something like that just had like 5 LEDs just to show like 20% increments of the battery
Yeah.
life. And then you could just be like, oh, it's at 80%. Oh, you're around 20% because half the time I'll like wake up and be like, oh, the battery's orange. Like I've probably got a little bit of life left in it. And then I'll go to put it on and it's just
Right.
completely dead to the world. And I'm like, oh, I guess I
'Cause-
needed to charge that up.
The iPhone is aware of the Vision Pro. So like the first connection they have, I noticed, is in the settings for Optic ID. You can turn on where if your iPhone has been unlocked near you in the past hour, it won't ask you for your Vision Pro passcode even on reboots, which is
Oh,
wild.
nice.
Yeah, so
Oh, that's kind of wild.
because they know of each other, surely that battery percentage could be deemed over there too.
Yeah, you think that could go so much further, and like, is there any way to be like unlock my iPhone automatically? If
No.
Optic ID is active?
No,
Because that's the one I would want more.
the Apple Watch is the way to do that with like
Yeah, I don't
enable
wear
the
mine
Apple
enough.
Watch if you're wearing it and it's unlocked to unlock it over Bluetooth. That's the trick. with
yeah,
that.
that's like you got to be wearing 3 Apple devices.
You
in order
really
to-
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that was one of the ones that was most perplexing to me is that like just checking like a notification on your phone or like checking, I don't know, even like anything. It's just it's very
a pain in
arduous.
the butt, yeah.
Yeah, it's
funny 'cause
like,
I
I've
had to
never
turn
typed my
that-
password so many
I had
times.
to turn that feature back on because once I had face mask unlock, I've gotten new Apple Watches since then and it wasn't enabled. It's like, oh, I got to turn that on, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty handy. But yeah, or even like there's all those little things that it's like I can't believe they didn't do that, but it's I guess it's hard to forget that like all the things the original iPhone was missing, and you kind of got to cut them a little bit of slack and be like, this is still such a young product, and hopefully give them a little bit of time, and we'll get some of these nice little creature comforts.
Yeah, I'm very excited for visionOS 2, whatever they will throw in there. I think there will be a lot.
Yeah. Do you know, what's your prediction for when you think that'll happen?
I think June.
Like, do you think
WWDC, they did Apple Watch OS 2 months after the Apple Watch came out, right?
It's such an awkward thing where it's like that feels to me like so soon, like in terms of like visionOS 1, like and I guess in a way it did launch last year, so it makes sense in that capacity, but it feels like also at the same time it only launched in February, so to like wait a few months and be like 2.0 is ready, that feels so quick to me. But also like, okay, then do it at the next WWDC. That feels so long to me.
Yeah.
Like that's like a year and a half at that point. So
September's
like,
when it actually comes out, so it's like
yeah. So and like there's so many low-hanging fruit, like a bunch of the stuff we talked about, that I feel like if they just nailed all of these like little creature comforts, like quality of life improvements, and threw that in the 2.0 update, and I say it would be easy, like it would be, but I'm sure it would be complex. But if they, rather than like some big, like, you know, show standing feature, they were just like a bunch of like the little things you mentioned we've addressed, I think that would be like even a killer 2.0 update that would make a lot of people happy.
I'm so curious if the coming soon environments will be coming soon in visionOS 1 and like 1.2, or if they're like visionOS 2, they're finally here.
I'm so yeah, I saw that because I was like, I didn't know that there would be this coming soon element. Like I was like, have they mentioned what coming soon means? Like that's so strange.
Yeah, none of
like,
them are enabled at 1.1, so like are we getting a 1.2 with this stuff? I don't know.
It's yeah, I don't know. Like it's weird. Like I hadn't heard anything about that. I almost wish they didn't mention them. Like they just.
I think they had to be in there
because
it'd be so empty otherwise.
Oh, fair.
Like,
yeah.
There's
That's a good point.
Yeah, and it is weird. Like I mentioned earlier, like the white sands. I almost like you have to like look for because it's mixed in with all these coming soon ones. Like,
yeah.
They're not even all grouped together, the ones that are available, which is weird.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I think I've only been in like the White Sands one like once or twice. Like it's not super accessible, or like you kind of sleep on it.
Are there any big holes you want filled by developers for visionOS?
Like by developers other than Apple?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Honestly, at this stage, I feel like most of my like, oh, I wish this existed things are more on like at the OS level than at like the developer level. Yeah, so like I can't really think of anything. Such a bad answer, but there's like I've had a lot of fun like with the small amount of apps I've used so far, and they're pretty cool. But like a lot of the stuff that I'm like, oh, I wish that worked a little differently. Like even stuff like the Mac virtual display thing, which is probably what I've sunk the most hours into. There's so many, like, it feels very like 1.0 to me, and so far as like little things like I wish I could pipe the audio through the Vision Pro, and maybe you can, maybe there's a way, but
I don't think
pipe
so.
the audio.
There should be, right?
Yeah, because like it's not like the Vision Pro is like amazing at like you wouldn't want to listen to the audio in a library because it leaks quite a bit, but it's a lot better than the speakers from a MacBook Pro. And I'll be sitting there like watching on the couch or something, and it would be kind of nice to have like a quiet volume. Like you open up a video someone sent you on iMessage on your Mac, and it like boosts all through your like booms all through your laptop speakers and everyone around you. I'm like, oh, that would be kind of cool to just pipe through the thing. Or even if you're just doing like visionOS development, it kind of drives me crazy that every time you like recompile the app, it just like appears front and center over your Mac window that you're trying to develop on, and you're kind of just like, get out of here. Like I wish you could just say like always put the app off to the side that I'm working on.
Yeah.
Because right now, it's like every single time I run the app, it's like I do this like little ritual where I pretend to stare off in the distance for a little bit so it'll spawn over there, and then I look back at my Mac, and it's like it's so strange. So I'm hoping like little stuff like that, rather than like being a developer fixable thing necessarily, will be fixed hopefully in 2.0.
One thing I noticed is this is the only Apple platform where there isn't a mute notification sounds option anywhere in the OS.
Oh, interesting.
Like it's not there. You can turn down the volume all the way, but there's like it expects
but then you lose everything else.
Yeah, it expects you to have audio basically. Like you're always going to get the little beeps and bobs from apps and stuff. And I don't know, as a developer designing an app in an environment where you don't have to have a contingency where they won't hear you, like in iOS, you have to design stuff knowing they might not hear your stuff. Like, does that? I don't know. Does that make it where, like in Juno, for instance, you'd want to have some little, I don't know, little sounds anywhere as you're interacting with the app? Or?
Yeah, well, it's like little stuff like some of the like UI components Apple has, like the slider. I built like a little component to recreate like I think it's like the playback slider they use in like the AV player stuff, where it like expands on selection.
Yeah.
That doesn't work in the normal slider API, so I kind of rebuilt that to have that effect. And I noticed like, oh, the visionOS sliders, they have like little like effects when you like select them and everything. Like all the controls do, the buttons too. So I had to kind of like go back and add those in manually. So yeah, like the audio situation on visionOS is just kind of, it's like one of the areas that's honestly felt the most bizarre to me. Like it's
there's so many ways to change audio. So I can look up and grab Control Center. I can spin the dial to spin it that way. Each apps have their own thing, and if you're wearing AirPods, you just like do the thing where you're just.
My AirPods don't have. Yeah, I have the old ones, and they don't do that. So it's like for me, I'm always doing like the look up thing.
Yeah.
And then scrolling the head, and like for a while, I didn't even know you could like that was a thing. Like I thought it was just the environment, and then someone mentioned to me, and I was like, oh okay. But I find it like very hard to get accurately. Like for the first 180 degrees of spin, I'll like start activating like Mount Hope.
Yeah.
Or Mount Hood, and then I'll be like, ugh. So it's kind of like, to me, I'm like, okay, I want this at the app level just so I can like control it in Juno. And then like the traditional like MP volume view that you use to control the volume, like I found it doesn't work at all in visionOS. Like it gets out of sync. Like it's supposed to accurately represent the system volume. And then like sometimes you'll just do it and the system volume won't react or vice versa. So that's weird. And then I was like trying to do like Juno works through web views representing like the YouTube content. And I was trying to make it like, I think somebody was like, oh, it'd be cool if I could like have a YouTube video playing, but also maybe like that I'm just kind of like half listening to, but also have like my podcast running. And like right now, Juno, as soon as you play a YouTube video, it'll pause all the other audio. And I was like, okay, like that's a pretty simple API. Let me look into that. But it's like the WebView API runs like its own audio session that is completely inaccessible. So you can't even be like, stop that. It's just like, nope, I'm doing my own thing. You can't tell me what to do. Screw off. And I'm like, that's also strange. And it's like, it's so hard to control stuff at the audio level in visionOS, I find.
That's my biggest point with the OS is I thought you could just have like 1,000 videos playing in different windows and the OS would let you do it. And it's like iPad and it says no. It's wild. Like I think you could do it within the same app, but I think even with a web view, I don't think I could because they'd all be running their own audio session and all fighting each other. Like you could play them concurrently, but I think you'd have to mute all of them except the one you're using. Yeah, like I almost want like all of the audios working and whenever I'm looking at the audio to be more prominent.
Yeah, exactly.
Like design if I was Apple.
Yeah, it's weird that they adopted almost like the iPhone iPad model where it's like a King of the Hill situation rather than kind of like a
whoever plays for last is the winner,
and that's again hopefully something that just was like, oh, this is how like the underlying iOS or iPad OS that presumably they built visionOS off of, this is how it works there. Like we'll ship that for a 1.0 and hopefully with feedback we'll go, okay, maybe we should go back and
and like on iPad OS, they have long needed to add some kind of multi-audio way of having multiple apps deal with this. Like, so hopefully this just comes across
like it's an area I find Apple in general is kind of like weird with audio in that like even on the Mac you need like all those Rogue Amoeba utilities to do really anything. Like I forget what I was doing the other day, but I was editing like a Final Cut Pro video and I was just like cutting clips. And I was having music running at the same time. And I was like, but whenever you scrub over the Final Cut Pro clip, you hear like,
yeah.
And I was like, I don't care about the audio. I'm just trimming clips right now. There? And I was like, surely there's a way in macOS to say like Final Cut Pro, stop talking. Like just your audio, I want you muted. But there's not unless like the developer goes in and manually implements that. Whereas like, reading comments, it was like that's where all like the Windows users got all like braggy was they were like, yeah, on Windows like you get like app level audio levels, and it's like stuff like that I think like it would be nice if even if it was like a power feature that Apple did a better job of kind of addressing, because right now it's kind of you just have to like throw your arms up and go, I guess this doesn't work. Which is not the greatest experience.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So I was noticing on your blog, 3D printed Vision Pro stand looks amazing. I also noticed
Thanks.
You have a beautiful cat as well.
Thank you. Yeah.
I was curious. My cat loves to test gravity. Is your cat less curious than my cat?
It's weird. Like we have two actually, and they're hyper focused on very specific things. Like something is either very interesting to them or not at all.
Okay.
And oddly, like, yeah, I found like I have like an AirPod stand for my headphones.
Yeah, my
like,
headphones totally, like, I need to have those. That knitting would be totally ripped up if I love it.
Yeah. Well, and it's like they just have absolutely zero interest in that. But like you'll put like a random plant beside it, and they'll go absolutely haywire and like try to destroy it. And it's just there's certain things that I found they have like they'll maybe like go and like rub up against it from time to time just because cats do that, I guess. But they don't have like that abject, like I'm very like knock on wood, they don't have that like desire just to knock everything over. Like that being said, if you put like a little, shot glass on the side of a dining table, I'm sure they'd knock that off. But like the bigger stuff, like the Vision Pro stand, for whatever reason, they have just absolutely no interest in it.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Which is, very, very fortunate.
Yeah. I'm so curious in like a couple years, I've been looking up those intake valves and, dust and stuff is definitely getting in there. I wonder, like
for the Vision Pro.
Yeah, I'm curious, like with pet fur and stuff, like how much of a thing that'll be with intake, if that'll be.
Oh my god! Like
in the future.
It's so funny you say that because like the other day, like I find like Vision OS development, like because it's a little wonky on the headset. Like what I was saying with the Windows, like I find I'll do a lot of it still on the Mac through the visionOS simulator, and then like I'll do the final testing on the device, and I find like that visionOS simulator like just kills my Mac like nothing else has. Like people are like, oh, I love Apple Silicon because like you never hear the fans, and I'm like, you have not done visionOS development. Like that thing makes my fans scream. And I was like, to a certain extent, like this I'm using like an M1 Pro, so it was like the first Pro, whatever MacBook they released with Apple Silicon. So it's like 2.5 years old now. And I was like, I've never cleaned this thing out. Like maybe that'll address it somewhat. Sure enough, I opened it and there was like some dust in the fans, and I cleaned that out, and it helped to a certain extent. Like it lowered it a little bit. It's still quite loud, but it's noticeably lower. As I was like buttoning the laptop back up, I was like, oh my God, in 2 years, like when the Vision Pro has like all this dust caked through the fans, what am I going to do? Like, I don't know if you just put a leaf blower through it and just hope it like blast it all out.
The other end,
because otherwise, you're like, you watch that iFixit teardown, and it was like, watching like a botched surgery. Like it was hard to watch. And I'm sure shit not doing that with mine. So it's not going to be fun. Like maybe that'll just be like a standard procedure at the Apple Store. Like they I don't know, like, or they like suction or they tape one side off and then just like a sucker, and it just like hydraulically sucks all the dust out the other end or something. But
I need to look at the breakdown and see what that space between the top and the bottom has in it, and
it feels like it must be pretty unobstructed, just because like I find like if you're running something pretty intensive, like you can put your hands above you and you can feel the airflow.
It is kind of nice in winter. It's all cold. We just put a hand up.
Honestly, like you could
you
could 3D print like a little air deflector almost, and just have it like wear that as like a instead of a toque or something.
Making the 3D stand, how'd you go about just like figuring out the dimensions and all that stuff?
Mostly just like like trial and error, just with a set of calipers and measuring it. Like it's the 3D design stuff's been like so fascinating to me for a long time, because one of those things that you get like a 3D printer and you're like, this is cool building other people's stuff, but like you just inevitably run into stuff that you're like, this is so bespoke and unique to me that I there isn't something out there for it, and I want to design it. And there's like YouTube is such a wealth of information that there's like 8 zillion tutorials on 3D modeling, and it's so commonplace now that like the tools aren't like, I pictured it would be this thing you'd need to go to like 4 years of mechanical engineering, get a master's degree or whatever in order to open the software, but it's very like democratized and easy to use nowadays. So I'm always looking for like little things to build or kind of like learn the tools a little better. Like I built like a little case for my keyboard, and this was admittedly one of the harder ones that I was like, because it's like the Vision Pro is like you see like the assembly video, it's such a wacky shaped device. And I was like, okay, this is going to be challenging. And I think it took something like 10 of that like Pringle chip thing at the top of like printing it and like measuring the curve because it wasn't quite sitting perfectly on it, and then like making sure it wouldn't slide off.
You'd almost want to like use a travel case and scan like the little
That's
being
what I was
inside
thinking.
of it or
But like
something.
the triangular mesh you get from like the 3D scans is so like janky, for lack of a better term. Like it's very hard to, like, unless you're using something like Blender, it's really hard to like push and pull it. Whereas like I like in Fusion 360 you can kind of just like model like a Bezier curve, and if like the thing isn't perfectly setting flat on it, you can just say, okay, make like the amplitude 9 mm instead of 10 mm, reprint it, and it's so like parametric and easy to tweak there. But it was definitely like a lot of trial and error, like getting out calipers and being like, okay, how big is the battery? How deep should I make this? Okay, that wasn't quite on. Like, let me reprint it. And it's one of those things where I'm glad like there's a local place that does like that will recycle your filament, your failed prints back into new filament. Because I was like, oh god, this is a lot of like wasted plastic. Right. Otherwise, just printing it and failing.
One cool thing would be if the battery could slot in vertically and almost like dock it in the power when you set it down almost.
Oh,
it had like a USB-C cord at the bottom popping.
Yeah, well, in the same way, I really wish it had like some MagSafe capability.
Yeah,
in and of itself, that I could just like in that little thing at the bottom, like just to charge it like 15 watts over, or even like 7.5 watts or whatever the lower Qi one is. Because you just set it there overnight and have it charge up by the morning, I think would be really killer. And I'm half tempted to just get one of those kind of sketchy Amazon like coils that you just plug in that do it, and like. But you'd use the USB-C port for like traditional charging. So it's kind of like, yeah, I almost want to like do the iFixit route and completely gut it and take out the internals and like try to wire some stuff up and give it like dual USB ports, or just have a MagSafe thing, or maybe give it a bigger battery. But yeah, it's the charging situations. Yeah, it's a little weird. Like I said, you don't necessarily know how charged it is at any given time.
No, and it's there's overhead in the battery, so it's one of those weird batteries where you can charge from 0 to 100 and it never slows down the entire way, it feels like.
It's very cool. Yeah, like that was surprising to see. Like I ended up charging on like just my MacBook Pro charger, because it charges at like 60 watts instead of 30 or whatever, and it's I think it only dips down to like 50 watts at like the very end. It's pretty cool. And and if you did the 30 watts, I'm sure it would just be 30 all the way through.
Yeah, I've got one of those Anker 2700 whatever, the big boys.
Oh, the 767 or whatever.
It tells you like how much power it's using, how long the battery is going to last at this rate, and it's like this huge battery is going to die in like 2 hours because you're charging a Vision Pro and use.
Yeah, it's no, the battery is like decently beefy on the thing. Like it's like half the size of a MacBook Pro's battery, which is obviously much bigger.
Did you end up getting any other accessories, or is there any other things you're wanting to find for it that you don't have yet?
I bought a second battery just because I knew I would be tempted to take it apart.
Right.
And I was like, if I take it apart and destroy it, I want to know that it's not my only way to use the headset, because like I ideally don't want to drive back to the US just to be like, I broke my battery. But other than that, I don't think I really bought anything. I'm still on the lookout for a good travel case. Because I found like it's at this awkward period now where it's still so early, like people haven't necessarily had a lot of time to develop products for it. And it's such a niche market that there's not like a massive demand, but I still just want something that's like much more compact than the Apple one.
The Apple one is like a good at-home case, so you can pull it out and leave the band on and everything's there. But for traveling, it's kind of big. Yeah,
it looks like a juggernaut. Like I want something that like I can just kind of put my Vision Pro in, and it takes up kind of like the minimal amount of room in my bag, because I like to travel really light with just like a carry-on ideally. And if suddenly like my carry-on is half Vision Pro, like it's a lot less appealing. So keeping an eye out for that. There's definitely some like cool ones on Amazon, but like the purist in me is like, I hate how half of them are just like have like MetaQuest or something like plastered across the front, or like the 3 MetaQuest eyes, just basically being like, this is a repurposed Facebook thing. Like I want something like,
I got that off. I got the Apple travel case, and that's my good at-home one. At some point, I want to get the Waterfield one. That's like $150, but really well designed. It seems like. Yeah,
that looks pretty nice. I'm not completely sold on that one, and that you have to take the band off. Even though
that's how you get it small, right?
The band off. Yeah, I just feel like there's a middle ground between the Apple one and the Waterfield one, where can keep the band on.
Yeah, I wonder if the dual loop would condense down without taking it off.
Yeah, but then you'd have to use the dual loop.
You do, yeah.
At what cost?
Right, yeah. Oh, man. So, Juno, you started building this once you heard YouTube was not coming to visionOS? Is that kind of like where the journey began?
Yeah, pretty. It might have even been like a little like I wasn't like totally on the ball there. I wasn't like YouTube said no, like go 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 go. I think I was like kind of just like for like 2 or 3 days, just like oh that kind of sucks. And then I was like oh wait, Apollo has all that YouTube like code. Oh, I could build something. And then I, like honestly, like my first thought was just like I'll just build this like a quick like MVP just for me, like just so I can watch YouTube. Then I was like like people like YouTube, like maybe like there's some other people who would enjoy this. And then I think I just kind of like tweeted something vague about it. And there was like a lot of people being like, yeah, do it. And I was like, oh shit. Okay. So then I think like at that point it was like a week until Division Pro would actually come out. And I just like hunkered down like hackathon mode and just like crammed out like a 1.0 that was still missing like a lot of the stuff I added in 1.1. I think ideally would have been in 1.0, but it was like one of those things where I was like, I want this out as soon as possible. And as long as it's like working and does like a substantially better job than Safari, I'll be happy with it. And I managed to get that. Like, it's funny. I remember like driving down to New Hampshire and stopping at one of the superchargers and seeing like, your app's been approved. And I was like, oh shoot, perfect. like literally running up against the final minute here. But it was really fun. Like it felt very like, last minute, and like you're working on something up until the final minute, and getting it out there on day one was like such a cool feeling.
Yeah. And you had not used Vision Pro at a developer lab prior, so you're building all from simulator stuff, right?
Yeah. Like I had gone to a developer lab, but I hadn't done anything with Juno like at that point. So I had experience with the device and how it kind of worked. But it's one of those things where it's like that's helpful to a certain extent, but you really want to like be able to actually like go to the developer lab with what you're building.
Yes.
And since I hadn't even conceived that as a concept, it was obviously not helpful for unplanned ideas at the time. So I was going into it pretty blind, and it was one of those things where as soon as you got the device and started trying out some stuff, like you were like, oh, this works, this doesn't work at all. Like, I like this, I don't like this. And you very quickly kind of like can assimilate a list of this needs to be changed like sooner than later, because it does not work as well on the device as it does in the simulator, because for the uninitiated, the simulator is just your mouse. So you very quickly get trapped into a like, this is kind of just like an iPad UI where I can like hover my mouse over something and drag it. Whereas on the Vision Pro, like the eye precision's great, but it's not as good as a mouse, obviously. So you're suddenly like, oh, my assumptions about like it basically being a mouse UI, in some ways is not at all accurate. And so that requires some changes.
Where'd the name Juno come from, and were you tempted to find an A name when you heard about the alphabetical assortment?
That's a good point. Juno, the name, I wish I could. I think in like I have like a document that's just like random app names I think would be cooler. Maybe it was like random icon names for Apollo icons. And I think I had Juno in there just because like I like the sound of it. It has kind of like, I think it's a Roman god or something. So it kind of had like kind of the Apollo ethos with it a little bit too. And it was kind of short and punchy. And I don't know, it's just one of those things that you hear the name and you're like, yeah, I kind of dig that. And it's kind of cool too that it's in Canada, it's kind of like our Grammys. Like it's like a music awards thing. So it's not like YouTube isn't music, but there's kind of like an entertainment aspect there that kind of worked. So it just kind of felt right. And then I was able to find like Juno.vision was available, and I was like, this has got to be it. And then of course, like a few days after deciding that, like all the stuff came out about the alphabetical home screen stuff. And I was like very tempted to name it like Aries or something like with an A, like keeping with the Apollo thing. But then I was like, I don't know if I care that much. J is still like in the first
middle.
Half of the alphabet.
It's not at the very end.
It's not that bad. And like now that I've used it, I'm super glad that I didn't care that much, because I thought like reading the news articles that like, oh, that would mean that like if your name was Aardvark, you would be on the first page. But it's like, no, Apple gets the first page even if all their app names are Zebra. Like, you're kicked to the second page no matter what. And like at that point, I find it like if you've already got to swipe a page to get to you, it's suddenly not that important, I guess. Like if you're on page 3 instead of page 2, like you're still swiping through pages. So I don't think it's that big a deal. And especially because I don't think that's going to persist forever, obviously. Like that feels very much like eventually you will hopefully be able to have some app sorting mechanism.
Well, it seems like, the app library is this alphabetical sorting. I wonder if, they'll add on top of this alphabetical sorting, which is kind of like the app library, some other way of organizing.
Well, even
stuff.
if they just added like a way to have some sort of like dock-esque thing at the bottom where you
Yeah,
could like
that'd be
drag in
nice.
your favorites.
Yeah.
Just because, like I said, like compatible iPad apps, like maybe it's punishment and Apple's like build a better app. But like having a few of those just like more readily accessible, I think would be really killer. And just being able to drag a few apps into the dock for quick access, quick launching, I think would be really killer.
It's the compatible apps folder has the best density of apps, as far as like you can get through a lot of apps in that folder.
That's true. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but yeah, it's a very dense UI.
And if they bring folders to visionOS, you could get through a lot of apps that way too.
Yeah, no, that would be a good. Like, I think I'd almost prefer that.
So I really want a video player folder. Like put Disney Plus, Max, and Juno, and let me put those all in a folder I can put on the first page or something close.
Yeah, not being able to organize things at all is kind of like, it's a little stressful at times, and it obviously won't get any worse as more and more apps come out.
Are you using Siri often to open apps?
No, I haven't. I use it just randomly for like Siri stuff, like mostly with HomeKit. And I find it so cool just to say like, the summon word and then whatever, and it just kind of like the orb appears in front of you. It's
and I
like
love it's where you're
Siri
looking. So if you like look at a place and say, open this app, it'll open it where you're looking, kind of thing.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's probably like a good way to launch things. Then I haven't done that, but definitely will now.
Yeah, sometimes I don't want to talk, and it's like it takes so much longer just going through the UI.
Yeah, no, it's harder when you're like walking down the street with it or something.
Right, yeah. Or if you got like a sleeping child, then you're trying to be quiet.
Exactly, yeah.
So bring YouTube to visionOS. What was your... you went through some different approaches to try to make this happen and not run into API limitations and all that?
Yeah, well, like after all the Reddit stuff, like in the back of my head, I was like, I kind of would ideally like not to deal with like API quotas and API keys and kind of like this like not that I have any fundamental issue with kind of like an API agreement, but like I just if there's a way to avoid they can always change. And if there's a way that you can kind of if the platform has a way that doesn't necessitate any of that, like I think that's like a nicer way to go. And YouTube thankfully has like they have this kind of like data API that like you can't access the video data itself. You can access like the metadata and you can upload videos, but you can't get to the video itself. So like I was kind of like, oh, I could use that to like let a user sign in and like pull in all their subscriptions, but A, that would take a lot longer. B, you'd be subject to like quota limitations because I think it's like 10,000 a day or something for the entire app.
Wow. So you'd hit that like instantly. Yeah.
Very quickly. And you also run into a thing where like if at any point YouTube was like woke up grumpy and was like, actually we don't like this, like they could nuke it. Where I was kind of like, I could build this much faster. You'd get a bunch of awesome stuff like rather than just relying on subscriptions, you can say like, oh, the YouTube home recommendations, which like for better or worse, I end up on a lot of the time. Just,
I found some good stuff for that.
Where you wouldn't, I don't think that's exposed in any way through the API. Whereas if you just load the website and do some stuff with a web view, you get all that. And you also got the benefit of like, there's nothing to revoke because you're literally just a web browser fundamentally with some custom theming. And I don't think there's any rules against being a web browser that YouTube could meaningfully enforce. And it made it a lot faster. And like all my code in Apollo, since that's really the only way that YouTube approves of accessing the video, like you can do some like stuff with like network inspection and like find the whatever URL to get to the actual YouTube video. But like YouTube fights very hard against that. Like they don't like it at a policy level, so you might get in some trouble there. They also, I think, like update it like frequently. It's kind of like a cat and mouse game of like finding those URLs. So it's like, I don't want to play around with that. I never did that in Apollo since they had like this iframe API that you could use to like basically just embed the web view itself and like have a dedicated player view. And that worked so well in Apollo that I was like, okay, that's like a fine enough starting point that I'm just going to run with that. And I had the experience there. So it was kind of like what allowed me to build the initial 1.0 like so quickly. So it's one of those things in hindsight, it felt like the obvious decision. And like I wrote like a blog post yesterday talking about like kind of like the video codecs YouTube uses. And there's like a lot of codec politics where I guess long story short, like Apple and Google don't seem to necessarily agree on some of the codecs they want to use. And 4K YouTube videos use a codec that isn't really available to developers. Like YouTube has a special entitlement to play it in their app, and you can also play it in Safari. And like meaningfully, that means like the only way you as a developer, you can't, even if you get that URL, you can't play it in your app because you don't have like the special entitlement. So you need basically like a web view is the only way. Like even if YouTube was like super cool and been like, here's the URL, play it however you want, like you fundamentally couldn't. So the web view kind of like in many ways is the best way to show YouTube in an app. So it worked out really well, I like to think.
Yeah. So yeah, when I upload a YouTube video, it says processing, and what it's doing, it's re-encoding it in their special codec.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I think and it's like, to Apple and YouTube's credit, like now they're encoding them all as like the AV1 codec, which is like super cool and like part of an organization that YouTube and Google and Netflix and Samsung and Amazon, everyone's a part of. So hopefully that'll kind of be the solution going forward. And Apple implemented that in the M3 series of chips in the A17. So like I can go grab like an AV1 video and play that back like perfectly on my iPhone 15. But since the Apple Vision Pro was announced so long ago, it only has an M2, so it can't decode any of this new format that everyone agreed on. So it's kind of like an awkward spot there where you kind of you're still kind of in the years of the codec battles, which is a little unfortunate.
Yeah. And so this approach, you think even if YouTube makes an official app, they probably won't care because it's just a website kind of wrapper?
Well, exactly. Yeah. Like I don't think I don't think they'd care insofar as like it's not really like some clients that might like exist and
you're not stripping directly. Ads or anything like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're still seeing all the ads. It's still fundamentally like they would take as much issue with this as they would with somebody going to youtube.com or somebody writing like a Safari extension. So it's like, not only do I think there's nothing fundamentally for them to worry about, like it also exists just as a browser extension would, which there's tons of on the App Store. So I'm not even sure that like if they were to get grumpy about it, like what the recourse would be there, because web browsers are, as far as I know, kind of like just a thing that is able to exist. And so, yeah, and YouTube's been great with having like, the only thing I could think they could do is if they got really grumpy, which again, I don't know why they would, is like completely kill the embed service that they have. But like that would have such far reaching consequences across like embedding
every website
content in other parts of the websites. Yeah. That would be such a nuclear solution that I don't see them really doing that. So I think it's definitely a situation where like, I think whenever they do end up ultimately releasing a YouTube app, I think it's one where they can kind of both coexist happily, because YouTube's still getting the ad revenue and everything. The YouTube Premium subscribers, like everything is still going through them. So it seems like hopefully a happy future.
One cool thing with it being a native app and not some iPad app is the aspect ratio. So if you like load up a YouTube short that's vertical, like your video turns vertical, it's great.
That was definitely one of the things I wanted the most, because in Safari, like if you watch like an MKBHD video, like I think the YouTube website just assumes everything's 16:9.
Yeah.
Whereas like some videos like MKBHD ones are like 2:1 or 18/18:9. Or if you watch like a movie trailer that's 21:9, you get these like gaping black bars.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, it totally breaks the immersion of having this like floating window when it's suddenly half of it's like black pixels.
It's wild. Disney Plus had black bars in one of their videos. Is the Clone Wars Bad Batch? They had some black bars. It's like, sometimes they like that? It's weird. Yeah.
Well, sometimes like it'll even happen on YouTube where like the people will like encode it into the video itself. Right. So like the video pixels will have black bars in them, and I don't understand why. Like I can only assume some devices don't respect it and they're like hard coding it weird because they feel the black bars make it feel more cinematic or something, but it's very strange. Like I notice it a lot with movie trailers. They'll encode it like right into the video too. And it's
and I wish, so Apple's asking, do you want this in 3D or 2D in the TV app? I wish like for TV shows I bought that were like 90s sitcoms, do you want this in 4:3 or widescreen? Because I'd love to be able to select the original 4:3 for some shows.
Interesting. And there's no mechanism for that at all?
No, it's just like it'll do whatever format,
because
most of it's widescreen these days,
I was going to say they kind of like cropped all those 4:3.
They did, so you're losing some data,
Yeah, and like that kind of makes sense on like arguably like on some devices like the iPad.
iPad is great 4:3,
not the iPad, but maybe the iPhone like, it makes a little more sense.
Absolutely.
But it's like, when you've got this device where it can literally be whatever the hell it wants, like it doesn't make sense to kind of lose that flexibility there.
Yeah, for sure. And it is so cool seeing just aspect ratios just adjust fluidly for apps that.
Yeah, and the API, like they did a really good job on the APIs for that. It's very easy to implement that as a developer.
So having the device, I think we've all learned a bit about accidental input being a thing. I've turned off for like long video sessions. I've turned off hand tracking in my right hand, so I can just use that hand and stuff. So,
smart.
What have you learned as far as an app developer with accidental input in Juno? And
well, like one of the first, I did like the cardinal sin was like the worst thing imaginable. Where for like the original one, well, in Apollo I had it so you could scrub anywhere in the video to like quickly jump back and forth, and it was really handy just for like super easy control. And I was like, oh, I'll add that to Juno so you can just scrub anywhere to move. And like it quickly became that thing where people are like, yeah, I'm washing my dishes and watching Juno, and like I'd pinch and the video would go flying to a different part. And I was like,
right.
Okay, yeah, that's another case of like worked perfectly in the simulator because there's not really any accidental input through your mouse.
Yeah.
But on the device, it was a nightmare. So like I quickly axed that, and it's stuff like that where it's like, yeah, I think I want to like. I admittedly myself haven't had a lot of issues like with just watching a video and having accidental input, but it's like I've heard a few people like definitely do have that. So it's one of those things where I think it does make sense to kind of like add like even like the I'm trying to think. I don't know if it was iBooks or like the Kindle app, but they have like a little lock icon when you're lying in bed, so it won't like rotate. Like having those controls where it's kind of just like let me just chill. I think are definitely good ideas.
Yeah, I wish so. For hand tracking, you have to go in settings and go to hands and turn both hands off to like one of your hands. I wish that'd be in Control Center somewhere quick to just turn off one of your hands.
That's true. Yeah, I don't even know if you can do single hand. Like I don't, as a developer, I don't know if I could even like. I think I could kill all input temporarily, but I don't know if I could do it at the hand level.
Yeah, iOS. I've been so angry with their. If you're on your lock screen, you can fast forward a podcast just by accidentally swiping on the little bar, and I do that all the time. It's just such a easy accidental input thing that they added to videos and audio. It's just.
Yeah, like those actions that are so destructive, sort of. I just really wish Apple was more into undo buttons. Like even in Apollo, like I added a thing where like if you accidentally tapped the status bar and it flung you to the top. Yeah, I had like a little like if you tapped it a second time, it would undo it and just drive you back to right where you were. Just because like those little actions that you do one thing accidentally and it completely destroys your progress is like it's so frustrating.
So in 1.1 that you released, quality was an option that we can now pick which version of the video we want. Yeah, exactly. Is there a way to just always have YouTube load up the 4K highest resolution video, or are they trying to limit bandwidth use?
No, you totally could, and it's an option I'm looking at adding. It's just it's tricky in that like 4K like does take like a beat longer to load. Mm-hmm. I think the default visionOS window is like. I think it's only like 1280 by 720. So like to a certain extent, it was kind of a trade-off I wanted to make between like, I think it defaults to 1080p right now. And I was like, it's a decent trade-off between like the size of the window that most people look at it and having like a fast loading speed. But like, yeah, I totally get that. Like a lot of people are just like, I always want it big and high quality.
Because you have no way of telling how big of a window Juno is loading into, right?
You do actually.
Okay.
Yeah, you can observe all that stuff.
Because that'd be interesting if like you notice, the window is maximum size.
Yeah, that would probably
versus a smaller window.
No, that's probably a good. Even just doing it that way. That's a good point. Like it's a tough call between doing that or just giving like a setting to always load 4K. Yeah. Because like
because some people just they want the 4K number even if it doesn't make a difference. And
that's what and that was kind of my fear with adding that option is I feel like I could add like an always show 4K option, and as long as I showed the 4K icon, they'd be like, right. And even if I was showing like 1080p, and like I'm slightly like that seems like such a hit to like loading times just for like something I'm not sure a lot of people would tell the difference for. But yeah, I think I need to do something there.
Yeah, because currently there's no settings in the app. Have you considered like what what that looks like if you do add settings?
Funnily enough, I have a full settings screen done, but like it's so much of the settings UI is like at the top I have like different app icons you can choose from. And I had that in the initial like 1.0, but I was like, let me test this on device. And you go and it's like none of the icon selection work. And it turns out there was like a bug in it's fixed in 1.1 now, but in 1.0, none of the app icon selection works. Like it just says like you can't change app icons on visionOS. Even though like the docs are like you should have app icons.
iOS apps, iPad apps, alternative app icons actually work.
Do work.
I tested. I tried
is,
Pocket Cast with the little raccoon app icon. Totally loads up.
Which is so funny.
Yeah.
So they clearly, I guess, noticed that and fixed it in 1.1. But basically, I had like so much of the UI dedicated to like, oh, these pretty new icons at the top. That like when I noticed they didn't work, I was just like, oh, like the settings look so. Like I don't have that many settings, and the few.
But
I'm
not sure
so
visionOS if it supports it. I think it might just be iOS apps. The compatible.
No, in 1.1. In 1.1, it works at like for any app.
Okay.
Yeah. They fixed that thankfully because they were like, I think it was like in the human interface guidelines. They're like, it would be really cool if visionOS apps you implemented alternate app icons. Like people love that, and I was like, okay, I will. And then it didn't work at all. And then like a lot of people like I'm not brave enough to have the 1.1 yet because I don't want it to break.
Yeah, I don't want to mess with that. Yeah.
Yeah, because like I can't going to an Apple store would be pretty tricky for me. But a lot of people like tweeted at me like as soon as I think it was the second 1.1 beta, they were like, "Oh my god, like all the app icons work now. Like I can change them in visionOS. This is great." So I was like, "Okay, I'll ship my settings screen probably when 1.1 comes out. That'll be an incentive for everyone to at least upgrade." Yes. I was like, "If you want visionOS icons, update your app, update your OS too."
OS, yeah. Yeah, I would love Apple's old YouTube app icon is just a funny Easter egg option, but Apple probably would not like that.
Yeah, it was a tricky one there where it was like 50% like, yeah, I don't want to step on any toes, and it was also like the visionOS icons are round, and like converting that icon into something that would be round, like it didn't. Nothing felt great like at a design level, just because you've got like a circle, and then putting like, do you make the screen circular? Like it was kind of wonky. But yeah, it's a tricky one.
Yeah. And then drag and drop has been a lot of fun. Once I heard you could do that, it is fun to just drag stuff across apps, and that's now in Juno.
And they have such a satisfying like little sound effect.
Yeah.
Not through anything I did, just at the OS level. That I really like that too. That was a nightmare to get working though. Just like not out of like Apple's APIs for drag and drop are great and very easy to implement. But it was web views again. It's like the same thing with the audio session. That there's so many little things that it's like that I don't know why, but it's a very black box opaque API that like you would drag something into it, and I have the API fully implemented. It would work with every single other view, but the web view would just be like no. And like after some Googling, I found out like, oh, the web view just absorbs all the drag and drops itself, and like gives you no way to interact with that, or no way to
visual indicator.
Yeah, no visual indicator, no like delegate method to say like, oh, a user just dropped something. Do you want to let the web view handle it, or do you want to handle it? Like there's a lot of those APIs elsewhere. And as far as I could tell, like I was dragging and dropping links, and it wasn't even opening in the web view, like so it was kind of absorbing it without doing anyway. So I was like, this is really dumb. So I ended up just like at the like swizzling like the draggable API. So like whenever at the app level, like Juno now intercepts every single drag and drop attempt, and if it's being occurred on a web view, it just blocks the call completely. And I'm like I hate swizzling things. It's normally like a very bad idea, but it was like literally the only thing I could think of to allow that in. And sure enough, once I blocked the web view from absorbing everything, it worked like a charm. But yeah, it was definitely a little bizarre.
That sounds like it. For the share sheet in visionOS, is that easy to add Juno into it? Or I know the shortcuts with the URL scheme kind of can handle that if you build something.
So like open a URL in Juno, for instance?
Yeah. Like I tap Ivory, I open a YouTube video in Safari and hit the share sheet. I'd love if Juno would show up as an app option.
I would too. So I guess the long story short, there's not any API to do that. On iOS, there is and there isn't. There's so like the share extensions, like they run as an extension. They don't run as an app, obviously. And in that way, you don't have any access to the UI application API. So you don't have access to like, oh, open this link that they're trying to share in your in the host app. Like Apple does, for whatever reason, does not want share extensions or action extensions or anything to work like that. With Apollo, there's some hacks you can do to kind of like trick the OS almost into being like open the host app. And with Apollo, I was able to make that work so you could open like a Reddit link. And I was like, let me try that in visionOS. And it wouldn't work, period, because I'm 90% sure I'm correct in saying this, but like if you're not building an iPad compatible app, you can't even add a share extension like to a visionOS app. Like that's not an option. Like those don't exist for visionOS apps. So it's like, you fundamentally don't even have access to the hacky APIs. So like that was a bit of a bummer. And then I was like, I wonder how, like I know Ivory does a similar hack that Apollo did. And I was like, I wonder how Ivory handles like the open in Ivory option. And from what I could tell, at least on 1.0, like that hack does not translate very well to visionOS, because it brought up like a full screen, like transparent window over Safari that I could not close in any way. So it was kind of like you can open it in Ivory, but you've almost got to force quit Safari afterward because it gets it in like a very borked state. So the answer is like, it seems virtually impossible.
Okay.
So like
it's
the
so
best
weird
way,
because there is a share sheet there, but like it's just not accessible to developers.
yeah, it's like Apple's share stuff is like, A, it doesn't seem like it's been built for visionOS yet. And B, it feels like they want it to be like, like if you're like sharing to Twitter, it's like it's not opening it in Twitter, you're opening it like a micro Twitter and posting it and then closing the sheet, like you're never leaving Safari. And the idea that these share extensions can pull you into the app is something that I think Apple feels very much like they don't want to do for whatever reason, which is unfortunate. But like right now, like you said, the best way is either just drag and drop the link into Juno and it'll work that way, or you can just build like I do have URL extensions, so I can't build an extension directly, but like you could piece together pretty easily like a shortcut that would open the Juno link, and then I think you could just pin like the shortcut to that share menu, and then you basically have the same thing. But yeah, so it's kind of weird that it's so trivial to build with shortcuts, but as a developer you can't. Yeah, I don't really get it.
Very weird. So environments. I've noticed some third-party apps have environments, like their own ones that work within that app. Have you explored what that might look
Disney
like?
Plus and whatnot, you mean?
Yeah, like doing a one-off, like MKBHD Studio, partner with them, watch YouTube videos in Juno, and
yeah, that would be pretty cool. I have played around with that. Like Apple's immersive environments are like super intricate and well done. Like at first, I kind of thought they were just like a panorama photo that surrounded you, but like you look around and like the water's moving, like the rocks have depth that you can kind of look around. So they're almost like full 3D video game engine-y scenes. So like the bar to match them is pretty high. Like insofar as I couldn't like.
Yeah, I've seen some apps have environments, and they're like, "Oh, this is not like." There's this like peaceful writing, like an app to write for a writer in different environments. Like these are not good so far.
That's too bad.
Yeah,
and that's like Apple set the bar so high that I kind of don't want someone to open it and be like, "Oh, this is kind of lame." So I'm kind of like, I was playing around a little in Blender and just like building out like a little 3D scene, and importing that in Juno, and it totally seems like something that would be possible to do. And like it's on like my short list of things I want to do, just because it feels so fun.
Yeah.
To build something like that. And I think you could do some really cool stuff. Like I'd be curious, like it would be really cool to reach out to the MKBHD team and work on something there. But like,
I think they'd be totally into that. Like, I think they
would be too.
It's like, this is cool to us. I don't know. Yeah.
And but I'd be curious, like almost from like a technical detail. Like I know in my head in Blender, like, oh, I can set like a grass texture down, and then I can add like a tree, a 3D model of a tree, and then I can add like yada yada yada, some chair models, and then hey, I've got a 3D scene that I can plop into Juno, and then add like my web view somewhere in that scene. Like that conceptually makes sense in my head. But like for like if I was to do a studio, like I'd almost need them to go around with like one of those like photogrammetry models. Well, like even the 360 camera, like you wouldn't get any depth, right? Like it would just be like a flat texture. Like, and it would still look kind of cool, but like,
do they make
if
360 3D cameras? Is that a thing?
You kind of, well, like, funnily enough, with an iPhone, you can go decently far. Like, I just went and scanned, like, a room in my apartment with, like, the LiDAR sensor and the photogrammetry stuff. Like, there's an app called Polycam that does a good job of it. And then you get, like, a USDZ file that you can literally just, like, walk around your apartment. Like, it's so weird because you're still in your apartment, but, like, you're in another 3D layer of your apartment. And you can, like, look around, like, the plant pots and stuff and see it fully. And, like, you don't quite need to go to that level for, like, you're just watching a video, because as soon as you walk too far, Apple scenes kind of kick you out. But like it's tricky in that like I'd almost want to like get them to do like a 360, but then also like 3D scan some of the chairs in the office or something, so that like when you move your head a little bit, like you do see the side of the chair a bit, because otherwise like it would just, I feel like the illusion wouldn't be quite as cool maybe as Apple's, and I haven't played around with it enough to see if that's enough.
It'd be fun if you had like a Spiro ball rolled around or something, some like some
a Spiro ball.
You know those the Star Wars BB-8, they had that toy. Like,
yeah.
I don't know if you had some kind of like geeky kind of thing just rolled around your environment.
Yeah, no, I think that would totally be cool. And like I was even thinking like it would be neat to have like in one of the scenes you could even just have like an animated like cat sleeping in the distance or something, like just something cute, like those like lo-fi beats to vibe to or whatever, like scenes almost.
And like what sound does that environment have, kind of thing, like because the environments have ambience to them. Yeah,
that was another thing I was thinking about, where it's like it's interesting that like you'd really only want the sound playing when you weren't watching the video, right? Because you don't want to hear crickets over like MKBHD reviewing a new car. Like,
I think that's how like the Star Wars Disney does it. They have sounds, and once you actually play it, it gets rid of the sounds, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the obvious solution. I think because there's still like a decent amount of time just browsing around the website that some ambient sounds would be cool.
Yeah.
And having like the MKBHD like, it would be cool. Like I've been half like I should reach out to them, but I kind of want to like figure out what that would look like. Like what I would need them to do first. Like maybe I could even hire like because some people do like really cool, like they'll get like a Canon SLR and they'll go around and take like 1,000 photos of a room from a bunch of different angles. Then you like input it into like a neural engine thing, and it'll spit out like a really high quality 3D scene that like beats the pants off of like your little iPhone scanner thing. And maybe it would be cool to like have one of those guys, like we go down and like we do that out, but it's like I kind of want to figure out what that would look like. And
what you need to do to actually create the environment.
Yeah, exactly.
Make it work well.
So it would be fun though. I think it would even be cool because I think like one of the videos they said like they think long term they're moving to a new studio, so it would be kind of cool to have like a 3D memory of what it was.
Old place, for sure. Yeah. So over the weekend, you did explorations into 180, 360 videos in YouTube. Was 3D video part of that exploration as well, or
not entirely? Just because like.
Does YouTube have 3D content? I don't even know.
They do, but if it's like if normal like 2D videos are obviously the norm on YouTube, 3D videos are like a very, very small subset of that, or 360 videos are a very small subset of that, and then like 3D videos are even like a microcosm of that. So it's like you're going through these like levels of.
Because I remember I had a GoPro like 10 years ago that had the 3D hookup between the two things, so I upload some of those to YouTube a long time ago. I have no idea how to get that stuff playing in Vision Pro.
I think it's like theoretically possible. Like I think YouTube does accept them, and like depending on what web browser or browser in general you're browsing them through, it'll either show them like as two side-by-side images, it'll sometimes do like the red and green stuff. So it's one of those things that's like I was so focused on 360 and 180 since it's used quite a bit more
common,
that I didn't really, insofar as like if I can't get the 180 and 360 working, like I can't really get the other one working. But it's one of those things that I'm like, I think if I do manage to get 360 and whatever working, that would be a cool kind of next step to see how well that would work, because that would be a cool thing too.
And so far the story in 180 and 360 is it would take a lot of work because YouTube's not providing everything you would need out of the box.
Basically, there's like I was trying some like hacks with like taking snapshots of the video like really quickly and almost reconstruct it in a 3D scene, and I couldn't quite get that fast enough. But some people replied to my tweet and had some cool ideas that I kind of want to try, and I might be able to make that better. Some people had like at the codec, like it's not even that interesting an exploration insofar as like another option would just be to grab the direct video file like we were talking about earlier. But like, YouTube
doesn't
hates
like
that so much,
right?
So it's almost not even worth going down that path. Even if it was possible, which it isn't because the codecs don't work. But I was talking to someone else and they were saying like, basically like I knew with the embedded player, like they do have like spherical properties you can observe, and you can kind of pan around the video. And I was like, I knew about that, but like the component that was missing for me was, like you don't get eye tracking live data on visionOS for privacy reasons. So it's like, I don't know how you'd pan around the scene or whatever. But someone was like, you don't necessarily need the eye. You just go off head tracking alone, and just move it with your head. And I was like, oh, you're totally right. So I want to kind of play around with like head tracking data a little bit, like just using core motion. Like your head's almost a gyroscope. And I think I could do some cool stuff with that. So like, I don't think the story is necessarily dead yet. There's still a few more things I want to try that I think could potentially work.
Yeah. And something I discovered, there are people sharing like spatial videos on these different websites, to just people sharing panos and spatials. And the Files app, actually, if you load up a spatial video or a panorama, it has a button to go just like the Photos app to view stuff immersively, which is kind of neat.
Is it like a special format, or is it just like
I'm not
an MP4
sure.
file?
I'm not sure, and I'm not sure how many different 3D formats that would work with. Like, I need to test. Like,
I'm curious if it's just like a video file with extra metadata.
Yeah, because the Files app is aware of that stuff, which is cool. Because you don't have to.
Yeah, you'll have to send me one. Like, it would be cool to see like how that works. Like,
yeah, I can send you the link to the site, sharing all those. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, because like when you have direct access to the video file, like admittedly, especially in the correct codec, it gets a lot easier. But it'd be cool to see just how they do that.
Yeah. So something that YouTube does on a lot of platforms are these auto playing suggested videos. My wife loves this for when she's listening to music, and I also noticed playlists. If you navigate to a playlist in Juno and hit play all, it just kind of stops that first video.
Yeah. This is admittedly one of those areas where it like starts to become clear what YouTube features I use and
right.
I don't.
I gotta be clear. I also do not like this feature, never use it, but I know some people do.
No, and they totally, and I have nothing against it. It's just, it's something that like I never have autoplay enabled, and I don't really use playlists. Like I'll use them to say like, oh, I want to watch these later, but I don't watch them like sequentially. And quite a few people have been like, hey, I use this feature in this way. Like, is there any way you could add support for that? And like, I don't think it would be that hard to add. And just kind of on my to-do list. It's just kind of like, in my head, I kind of treated it like Reddit, where once you're done the video, like you probably want to just move on to something else.
Right.
And yeah, that's probably not the correct assumption for a lot of people.
Yeah. And would there be a way of toggling? What is the algorithm? Give me like 12 options of algorithmic picks to pick from. Is that another? Yeah.
Like in theory, it should, like, at least on mine, it gives you like probably like 12, and then it gives you some YouTube shorts, and then you can keep scrolling, and it should give you
on the main, just the main view.
Oh, you mean like for a video you're watching?
Yeah, like instead of like repeat or close the video, like on that end screen, have options right within.
Yeah, I don't think that would be that hard to do. It's a tricky one where like you suddenly get into like the YouTube UI, which like I found didn't look the greatest. But B, I also found like, it might have just been the simulator. I haven't tested this on device, but I found like when I left that screen in, like clicking on them did not work very reliably. Like it would take sometimes like a few clicks in the simulator for it to actually activate the video, and it felt really bad. And that might have just been a weird simulator issue. Like I might need to it might work perfectly on the actual device. So that's like an area I definitely want to test more, because kind of just being like, all right, you're done, goodbye. Like it definitely leaves something to be desired there.
Yeah. Are there any features that you want to implement but can't with the limitations of YouTube? Like you're kind of against a wall with certain things?
Only 360 was the one that I would have said probably before this morning, but now I still have a few threads. I think I might be able to implement that. The only other one I think would be downloading videos. But that's one of those areas that it's like, it's interesting to me because like, that's another area I don't use a lot, but like a few people have been like, it would be cool if you could download them for like a plane. But for me, it's like most planes I've been on lately have Wi-Fi. So it's not an area I've like the Wi-Fi isn't something you'd want to stream your video game input through. Like it's not great Wi-Fi, but like for playing a video, it's more than fine. So that's not an area I've been super into. It's also like, even at the YouTube level and like the iPad app, for instance, that does let you download them, you need YouTube Premium, which not necessarily a lot of people have. So it would be like, even if YouTube did offer a way to do that, it would only be for premium people.
Right.
So it's kind of like, it's a feature that would be cool. But like, I'm not exactly like losing sleep over and not being able, because like I could probably implement it if I wanted to like do some sketchy stuff with finding the video files.
Right.
It's just like,
stuff that YouTube
it's such a niche feature that it does not seem like you would be kind of bonkers to piss YouTube off for just such a niche feature. Yeah. So, but honestly, outside of that, like, I think the website is obviously like the way a lot of people use YouTube, and it's so full featured, being that it's the way so many people use YouTube, that just using that as your basis like has not really been limiting at all. It's like, and the YouTube website doesn't have the option to download videos either, so it's not like there's like, if it ever did, I could probably leapfrog off of that, but I think you need like the iPad app and whatnot to download them, and even then I think they expire after like 12 hours, or not 12 hours, like 2 days or something. So there's it's a wacky feature even when it does work. So I'm not too worried.
Yeah, you can upload videos within Juno and access the full Creator Studio because it's just the website, which is cool.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to experiment with like uploading some spatial videos and see if that. They probably just converts them and strips all that stuff though.
I don't know. That's a good question. I'm almost more optimistic that it might work, but I don't. I swear I've seen a few people say there's some mechanism for it. I don't know if you have to jump through some hoops to convert your video ahead of time to a different format that YouTube accepts, or if it does it automatically, but it would be cool to see.
Yeah. So I've been super impressed with spatial videos, just both on iPhone.
They're very cool. Yeah, especially
so well.
I find especially the ones that you take on the headset itself, like versus the iPhone, like there's definitely a lot more depth to data when the cameras are further apart. But like it almost makes me wish like Apple's next iPhone had like the cameras on like either end of the device or something, or they sold like a third party
or that
camera
fancy
lens.
New iPad Pro they're making
either or like just because right now like I like spatial videos, but I find they're so much more compelling when you take them with the actual device, and I don't want to be that Vision Pro dad going around like
I've done it a couple times, do playtime with it on, but not frequently.
Not the greatest look.
I find kids, at least 1-year-olds, don't seem to mind the headset, which is interesting.
Oh no, and I'm sure as it becomes more common, like it'll be less and less weird for people.
Anything with version 1.2 that you can share at this point?
It's still kind of up in the air with what is going to include. Like it might include the 360 video stuff if I ever do manage to get that working. But outside of that, it's a lot of like creature comfort stuff. Like I wanted to improve like the tab UI, like the window resizing. There's a bunch of like little stuff that didn't quite make it at a 1.1 that I think, rather than being like a massive headlining feature into itself, which would be the 360 stuff if I can get that working, it's mostly just going to be like a bunch of little stuff to make the app feel just a little bit nicer and a little more native, maybe.
Cool. Yeah, sounds good. As far as Pixel Pals, when is work resuming on exploring bringing that into visionOS?
That's a good question. It's one of those things that like I don't totally know. Like I want to get back to like I've spent like the last month building this, and there's like a bunch of stuff on the iPhone and iPad app that are obviously much more massive than the Vision Pro user base that I want to dedicate time to. So it's kind of a question of like when I feel like I can responsibly take time to work on the visionOS Pixel Pals app. Like in a way, I almost want to wait until June in a way just to see like what comes
new
of
APIs
2.0
and stuff.
And if maybe like you can have the immersive mode be a little more powerful and flexible, because I think that would create a more compelling experience. But otherwise, I think it'll just be like when I have some free time, because it's kind of like it doesn't make a ton of financial sense to do, but it would be a fun thing to do. So it's kind of balancing that, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm trying to just visualize if like a Pixel Pal embedded into Juno itself would make sense at all.
Yeah, I don't know. That would definitely be a little trickier. Like I think for me, like even moving away from like the pixelated aspect, like moving into more of a like an actual animal, like even just like a non-pixelated pal would be kind of cool. Just because
you have
like,
a,
the immersive
a cat
environments
sitting on your arm,
exactly,
watching a video kind of thing.
Yeah, and like that, like if it was too pixelated, I feel like it would look weird alongside the rest of the maybe more realistic things. So it's something I want to play with a bit more. It's just a function of finding the time. Yeah,
I was watching the Naughty Dog documentary on Last of Us Part 2, and they're talking about the fact that it was sadder and harder for players to kill the dogs in the game when they were more cartoonish, and as they got more and more lifelike, and the type of dog they used was like, I don't know, scarier or whatever. It was like
to do,
it was easier for the players to kill it. So it was like
it was easier to kill the realistic ones.
That's what they were saying. You have to watch that. I'll have to find the timestamp, but they had this whole dog segment, and like the
That's
more realistic,
fascinating. Yeah,
the
that's the
easier
opposite
it
of what I would
was.
think.
Because I mean, maybe I'm not conveying it.
No, I mean,
but that's what they were saying. Yeah.
That's fascinating. No, I would expect the opposite, but
because they were at a stage where the dogs were like not super. They weren't Pixel Pals level, but they were like not super realistic kind of.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
They're more the stereo cliche dog or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
The standard asset. Yeah.
Well, anything about Juno or visionOS we haven't covered that you want to before we wrap it up?
I don't think so. That was pretty thorough. I can't quite think of anything you would have missed. That was a really good overview, I think.
Excellent. Yep. Thank you so much for your time today, chatting about visionOS.
This was a riot. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for your time. And for those that want to learn more, Juno.vision.
Yep, that's the one. And I'm just at Christian Selig on pretty much every social network you can imagine, since it's so beautifully fractured nowadays.
Right. Yeah. And thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Awesome.
Well, that's my discussion with Christian. My thanks to Christian for his time recording, and my thanks to you for your time and attention tuning in. Make sure to check out Juno on the visionOS App Store if you haven't already. You can support this podcast over at visionpros.fm/Patreon. My thanks to everyone that supports the show. With that, I'll talk to everyone again real soon.